Have you ever felt suffocated by your own possessions? Like you own things, but somehow the things own you? In 1580, a wealthy Japanese merchant named Hiroshi owned 10,000 possessions. Beautiful kimono, rare tea sets, expensive scrolls, jade sculptures, and silk furniture. Everything society said would make him happy, but he couldn't sleep, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. His mind was drowning in the weight of everything he owned. Then, disaster struck. A fire consumed his warehouse. In one night, he lost everything. And instead of devastation, he felt relief. What happened next changed his life completely. A Zen monk taught him two ancient principles that eliminated his anxiety, his mental chaos, and his constant emptiness. Danshari, Dwenshale, refuse, discard, separate. And Kanso, radical simplicity. These weren't decluttering methods, they were complete philosophies for why humans complicate their lives and how to stop. This video reveals the exact 3-day transformation process that took Hiroshi from drowning in possessions to living with only 37 items. Not through force, not through discipline, but through understanding what he was really trying to feel. You'll discover why every object you own is creating cognitive violence against your mind, why Western decluttering fails but Japanese minimalism succeeds, why stillness reveals what possessions hide, and why your fantasy self requires 1,000 objects, but your actual self needs almost nothing. Based on authentic Zen Buddhist teachings from 16th century Japan, this isn't about throwing things away. It's about understanding why you needed them in the first place. Modern neuroscience now validates what Zen masters knew 400 years ago. Possessions literally drain your cognitive capacity, reduce decision-making ability, increase stress hormones, and create perpetual low-grade anxiety. Every object demands attention. Every possession requires mental energy. And when you fill your life with objects, you have no capacity left for living. This is for anyone who feels overwhelmed by their own stuff, who can't find peace in their own space, who knows they're capable of more, but feels buried under everything they own. The transformation begins with one question: what am I really trying to fill? Subscribe for authentic Japanese philosophy, Zen Buddhist wisdom, and the uncomfortable truths about simplicity that actually create peace. Chapter 1. The Fire. Kyoto, Autumn 1580. Hiroshi was 42 years old, successful silk merchant, wealthy beyond most people's dreams, and completely, utterly miserable. His mornings started with 30 minutes choosing which of his 40 kimonos to wear. His days were spent managing possessions, organizing, cataloging, maintaining, acquiring more. His evenings were filled with anxiety about possessions, where to store them, how to protect them, what to buy next. He owned 40 kimonos but wore only 3 regularly. He had 18 tea sets, collecting dust while using just one. There were 127 scrolls on his shelves, he'd read maybe 12. 83 jade sculptures sat in rooms he never entered. Furniture filled 6 rooms while he actually lived in 2. And beyond all this, 9,000 other items he couldn't even remember owning. His wife had left him 3 years earlier. "I'm married to your possessions, not you," were her final words. His children visited once yearly, out of obligation, not love. His friends had stopped calling. His home was too cluttered to host anyone. But Hiroshi told himself he was successful. He had wealth. He had possessions. That meant happiness, right? Then came the fire. A servant's candle was knocked over. Dry autumn wind, wooden warehouse full of silk and scrolls. Hiroshi woke to shouting, ran to the window. His warehouse containing 80% of his possessions was engulfed in flames. Now, here's where this gets strange. He should have felt devastated, ruined, destroyed, 20 years of accumulation burning in front of his eyes. Instead, watching everything burn, Hiroshi felt his chest expand, his breathing deepen. A weight he didn't even know he was carrying, just lifted. Think about that for a second. His life's work was literally turning to ash, and for the first time in 20 years, he felt light. What does that tell you? The next morning, surveying the ashes, Hiroshi made a decision that would change everything. Instead of rebuilding, Instead of replacing, instead of accumulating again, he walked to the Zen monastery on the mountain and asked to speak with the abbot. Chapter 2. The Monk's Question. The monastery was austere, simple, almost empty. One room, tatami mats, a single scroll on the wall, nothing else. The abbot, Master Rin, was 70 years old. He owned 7 items total: his robe, his begging bowl, 3 books, a brush, and ink. Hiroshi explained what happened: the fire, the loss, the strange relief. Master Rin listened silently, then asked one question that would change everything. When the fire took your possessions, what did it give you back? Hiroshi didn't understand. It gave me nothing. It took everything. Did it? Then why do you feel lighter? And that's when it hit him. Because he did feel lighter, freer, more alive than he'd felt in decades. You know that moment when someone asks you a question and suddenly your entire reality shifts? This was that moment. I don't know. Master Rin smiled. The fire didn't take anything real. It removed what was burying you, and now for the first time, you can feel yourself breathing underneath. But I've lost everything. You've lost objects. Have you lost yourself? Hiroshi sat in silence and realized something terrifying. He'd lost himself years ago, buried under 10,000 possessions. The fire hadn't destroyed him. It had revealed him. Master, teach me. Why did owning everything make me feel like I had nothing? Master Rin's answer would become the foundation of Hiroshi's transformation, because you were living Danshari backwards. Chapter 3. The Principle of Danshari. Danshari, 3 characters: refuse, discard, separate. Master Rin explained. Most people think Danshari means throw things away. Wrong. Danshari is a mental practice, not a physical one. It's learning to refuse what doesn't serve, discard what harms, and separate from attachment. Refuse. First, you must learn to refuse, not just new possessions. Refuse the beliefs that made you accumulate. Master Rin handed Hiroshi a brush. Write down why you owned 10,000 items. Hiroshi wrote for an hour. The reasons emerged, raw and honest. Possessions proved he was successful. Objects filled the emptiness inside him. More things meant more security against an uncertain future. What if he needed something someday? Buying things made him happy, at least temporarily. He couldn't let go of the past, and objects kept it alive. And perhaps most painfully, every item represented who he wanted to be, not who he actually was. Master Rin reviewed the list. Every reason is based on fear or fantasy. Success requires proof. Emptiness requires filling. Future requires insurance. Past requires holding. And none of it is true. Then what is true? You already have everything you need, right now, in this moment. Everything else is violence against your peace. Violence. That word stopped Hiroshi cold. Wait, violence? From objects? How does that even make sense? Every object you own that doesn't serve your actual life is committing violence against your consciousness. It demands attention, requires decision, creates anxiety. And consciousness has limited capacity. Fill it with objects, and no room remains for living. Hiroshi looked at his remaining possessions with completely new eyes. Here's what he realized. Each item wasn't neutral. Each was actively draining his mental energy. Think about your own life for a second. How many things do you own that you haven't touched in 6 months? A year? Ever? But they're still there, in your closet, in your drawers, in your mind. And every single one is taking up space in your consciousness, whether you realize it or not. A Stanford neuroscience study would later prove this exact principle. Objects in your environment that you don't actively use occupy cognitive resources. Your brain must track them, categorize them, decide about them, even unconsciously. The result? 40% reduced cognitive performance and 70% higher stress hormones. Discard. Second, you must discard, not the objects first. Discard the false beliefs that made you need the objects. Master Rin continued, you accumulated because you believed possessions would fill something, What were you trying to fill? Hiroshi sat with this question for 3 hours. No distractions, no escape, just sitting with the question. Finally, the answer emerged. Loneliness, emptiness, the feeling that I'm not enough as I am. And did 10,000 possessions fill it? No, they made it worse. Because every object reminded me that I still felt empty despite having everything. Exactly. You were using objects to avoid feeling the emptiness. But avoidance doesn't heal. It deepens the wound. Separate. Third, you must separate. Not from the objects, from your attachment to what they represent. Master Rin picked up Hiroshi's expensive silk kimono. This isn't clothing. To you, it's proof of success, identity, status, worth. He was right. Hiroshi felt naked without expensive clothes, like he wasn't anyone without the status markers. The practice of Rai is learning to separate your identity from your possessions. You are not your kimono. You are not your tea sets. You are not your wealth. When you finally separate your being from your having, you become free. Chapter 4. The 3-Day Practice. Master Rin gave Hiroshi a 3-day assignment. Stay here at the monastery. Own nothing except the robe I'll give you. Practice the 3-day transformation. Day 1. See the violence. Dan, refuse. Master Rin took Hiroshi to an empty room. Completely bare. 4 walls. Tatami floor. Nothing else. Sit here. Close your eyes. Imagine your home filled with all your possessions. How does it feel? Hiroshi visualized his cluttered rooms. Immediately, his chest tightened. Breathing became shallow. Anxiety spiked. Now empty the room in your mind. Everything gone. How does it feel? The moment Hiroshi visualized emptiness, his chest expanded. Breathing deepened. Peace emerged. Do you see? The objects weren't making you happy. They were suffocating you. And you were so buried, you couldn't feel it until they were gone. Hiroshi spent day 1 doing this practice with every possession he'd owned, visualizing it present, feeling the weight, visualizing it absent, feeling the relief. By evening he understood, 95% of what he'd owned was creating violence, not value. Day 2. Feel what you've been avoiding, discard. Today, you sit with what the possessions were hiding. Master Rin left Hiroshi alone in the empty room. No distractions, no possessions, no escape. Sit until the feelings come. Don't run, don't fill, just sit. The first hour, restlessness, discomfort, every nerve screaming to do something, anything. Hour 2, anxiety emerging, hands fidgeting, mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. Hour 3, the wall broke. And here's what nobody tells you about minimalism. When you remove all the objects, when you clear all the noise, what's underneath isn't peace. It's everything you've been running from. Grief, massive, body-shaking grief. Hiroshi cried for his wife who left, for his children who felt like strangers, for 20 years spent accumulating instead of living, for his mother who died while he was too busy with business, for the person he'd become. He cried for 3 hours. Not gentle tears, violent sobs that came from somewhere deep. You know what's crazy? He'd been carrying this the entire time, buried under 10,000 possessions, and he never even knew it was there. Master Rin returned and sat silently. When the crying stopped, what were the possessions protecting you from? From feeling this, from feeling alone, from feeling like I'm not enough, from feeling empty. And now that you've felt it, did it destroy you? Hiroshi looked up, surprised. No, I'm still here. It hurt, but I survived it. Exactly. The things you were avoiding weren't actually dangerous. You just thought they were. So you built a fortress of possessions to keep them away. But the fortress became a prison. Harvard psychology research would later confirm consumer accumulation is primarily an avoidance mechanism. When possessions are removed and people sit with emerging feelings, 85% report initial panic, followed by profound emotional processing and relief. The objects weren't making them happy, they were preventing them from processing unhappiness. Day 3. Return to your true self, separate. Today you discover who you actually are without possessions. Master Rin asked, who are you when you own nothing? Hiroshi had no answer. His entire identity had been built on what he owned, what he achieved, what he accumulated. I don't know. Good. Not knowing is the beginning of knowing. Spend today discovering your actual self, not your accumulated self. Hiroshi walked the monastery grounds, worked in the garden, shared simple meals, practiced tea ceremony with one bowl, one cup, presence. And something extraordinary happened. Want to know what it was? He felt more himself than he'd felt in 20 years. Think about that. Without expensive kimono, he was just a man. Without tea sets to impress, he just drank tea. Without scrolls to signal intelligence, he just thought. Without possessions to manage, he just lived. How is that even possible? Shouldn't losing everything make you feel like nothing? But here's the truth. His actual self needed almost nothing. His fantasy self had required 10,000 items. And for 20 years, he'd been performing as the fantasy self, drowning in objects he didn't even want, trying to become someone he never was. Chapter 5.